So yesterday we were talking about the relationship of the unsealing of the book of Daniel between Daniel chapter 8 and Daniel chapter 11.
Should I still remind you?
Yes, I've got the reminder. Okay. I meant to ask you about that before class. So we'll do this, and I'll try and do it as we go through the class. So you've got the Daniel 8 and Daniel 11. What unseals Daniel 8? Book of Revelation. Where did we read that? What was the Spirit of Prophecy quote that we had? Don't tell me no one can remember. Sister Shamila. Sorry? Is that what you think? Targets? Okay, I won't target you anymore.
No.
Brother Jonathan. How do you know the book of Revelation unseals the book of Daniel?
I'm just looking for it. I think I have it in my first essay.
Maranatha? 173, is that what we're going to go to?
What's that Larry's school?
We found it in another source. I think it was 2SM
107.
107 through 108. It's the letter 89, I think it is. I think that's been wrapped up.
Letter 89? I don't think it was letter 89. Because I wouldn't have had that on my computer. And I think I read it to you. Come on, folks. Well, it was only yesterday.
TM 115.3.
Sorry?
TM 115.3.
Oh, yeah, I just found it.
The book of Daniel is unsealed in the Revelation to John and carries us forward to the last scenes of this earth's history. Not sure why it's not there. Testimonies to Ministers 1:15, paragraph 3. So we know it's the book of Revelation that unseals the book of Daniel. And how do we know it's Revelation 14?
She mentions the first, second, third angel's message in the sentence before.
Daniel stood in his lot to bear his testimony, which was sealed until the time of the end, when the first angel's message should be proclaimed to our world. These matters are of infinite importance in these last days, for while many shall be purified and made white and tried, the wicked shall do wickedly, and none of the wicked shall understand. How true is this? Sin is the transgression of God's law, and those who will not accept the light in regard to the law of God will not understand the proclamation of the first, second, and third angel's messages. The book of Daniel is unsealed in the Revelation to John and carries us forward to the last scenes of this earth's history. Anyone else? Okay, so what else? So we know that the book of Daniel wasn't completely unsealed in Millerite history. There was one more portion to unseal. And what's that? Daniel 11. How do we know that? Spirit of Prophecy quote for that.
GC 604.1.
GC
604.1.
of Babylon.
I thought that's what we talked about yesterday, or maybe I'm skipping ahead. You were talking about Revelation 18 will empower Revelation 14 to unlock Daniel 11 and the second angel's message.
Of Babylon at the time brought to view in this prophecy, it is declared her sins have reached unto heaven, and God hath remembered her iniquities. She has filled up the measure of her guilt and destruction and destruction is about to fall upon her. But God still has a people in Babylon. Is this going to show us that?
She's talking about the last sentence, maybe.
Or the last sentence. These announcements, uniting with the third angel's message, constitute the final warning to be given to the inhabitants of the earth. Come out of her, my people. Hence the movement symbolized by the angel coming down from heaven, lightening the earth with his glory, and crying mightily with a strong voice, announcing the sins of Babylon. In connection with his message, the call is heard, come out of her, my people. These announcements, uniting with the third angel's message, constitute the final warning to be given to the inhabitants of the earth. Would you agree with that? Is that proof to show us that... What's the question we're saying? What's the question that I'm asking? Correct?
How do you prove Daniel 11 is the book that is unsealed in our history?
Yes. So will this do that?
I think it's GC. Sorry. It's that quote where it says the 11th of Daniel has almost reached their final fulfillment.
Where's that?
I think the words are, we have no time to lose, the world is stirred with the spirit of war. Trying to find it.
13 MR 3914.
Yeah?
9014.2. The world is stirred with the spirit of war. The prophecy of the 11th chapter of Daniel has nearly reached its complete fulfillment. Soon the scenes of trouble spoken of in the prophecies will take place.
Yeah. It is our memory verse. Here it is.
Oh, is that the...
Our memory verse. I'm not picking on you. Okay, so our memory verse. We have no time to lose. Troublous times are before us. The world is stirred with the spirit of war. Soon the scenes of trouble spoken of in the prophecies will take place. The prophecy in the 11th of Daniel has nearly reached its complete fulfillment. Much of the history that has taken place in the fulfillment of this prophecy will be repeated. In the 30th verse, the power is spoken of that shall be grieved and return and have indignation against the holy covenant, and so shall he do. He shall even return and have intelligence with them that forsake the holy covenant. But she quotes verses 31 to 36 onward. Scenes similar to those described in these words will take place. We see evidence that Satan is fast obtaining the control of human minds who have not the fear of God before them. Let all read and understand the prophecies of this book, for we are now entering upon the time of trouble spoken of in Daniel 12:1. So does that prove that the book, or the portion of the book of Daniel that's still sealed, or needs to be unsealed, is Daniel 11, the last 6 verses?
I think it does too, because they understood up till verse 39, and the rest needed to be unsealed because they didn't understand it.
You believe that? Who's they, by the way?
Well, the Millerites. The Millerites did not understand the last 6 verses. And that's just been until since 1996 and on that we've really understood.
So did you finish your point? Did you finish your point?
Yeah, I believe so. Yes.
Okay. Because Uriah Smith doesn't understand up to verse 39, does he?
Well, he didn't understand up to verse 39, you're saying?
Yeah.
He messed up around verse 36.
Is he?
He had an understanding of it, but I mean, he
Yeah,
had,
but so is evangelical Christianity.
well, I think Uriah Smith up to verse 39, he had a fairly good understanding. You know, not didn't have everything right, but after verse 440 and on, he really messed up.
Where does he begin to mess up, Sister Terry?
Verse 36.
Oh, is that where he starts with Turkey?
Yeah.
And
Verse 60 goes off right there? Okay. Okay, yeah, so he,
Verse 36, and the king shall do according to his will. Who's the king?
King of the North.
it's the papacy, but he thought it was Turkey, yeah, so it's
He
verse
changes
60
it
went
to
off.
a king. Why does he do that?
Like the king of what he wanted to.
I think he did it just because I think it was the news that changed his mind, just,
The what?
just the news reports, what was happening over in the world. I think that's what swayed him, and he followed the evangelical world, what they were saying about it.
I've seen your hand. Yeah. And in verse 40, how many people are in verse 40?
How many people?
I think he uses about
In the north,
Four. Who are the four he's going to use?
He uses.
Verse 40. And at the time of the end shall the king of the south. Who's the king of the south? Who's the king of the south?
I don't remember, but I don't think he
French?
uses
98
France.
or 19.
it's King of the South, Russia, Soviet Union.
No,
No, for Uriah Smith.
no,
Oh, for Uriah Smith.
he doesn't use.
Yeah, France.
No,
No, hold.
I don't remember.
he doesn't use France as the king of this one.
King of the North
France
is-
is the king of the North.
One person. No, you've got to talk to me, not to each other. Got to talk to me. Stick to the rules.
No.
Sister Shamela, you saying something? Or was it?
Did he think it was, he didn't think, he thought the king of the north was Turkey.
No, I'm asking you,
Right.
the king of the south. Who's that?
My answer was France, but I might be wrong.
Okay, who's the king in verse 36? I'm talking about Uriah Smith. Changes it to a king. Says if we could make it a king, it would all work out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So who's he making that king? Sister Terry?
Is that where it changes it to France?
Yeah.
So the king was.
So that's France, a king. So he's going to get 36 or 39 and totally change all of that.
Yeah. It's 36 he was on.
So in verse 40 it says, at the time of the end shall the king of the south put to him. Who's the him? It's the king of verse 36.
Yes.
Contextually, the king of verse 36. So the him would be whom?
France.
That would be France.
Yes.
So Egypt and France are going to have a fight. Do they?
Yes, he shows him the
Don't they? 1798?
Yep.
Yeah. And then the king of the north, which is who?
Turkey.
He says Turkey.
This
Oh,
is Turkey.
Uriah Smith, yeah.
Shall come against him. Who's the him?
France.
France. So he's going to have a fight with Egypt, then he's going to have a fight with Turkey. And does that happen?
Yes.
It all happens.
Yes, it did.
Yeah. Okay, so he doesn't have much of an understanding.
No, from verse
What's that? He's
36,
our-
right?
Well, I know he's our premier Bible scholar.
But most of the pioneers did not go along with this. That wasn't the accepted view by the majority of them, and that changed with Uriah Smith, who was not a pioneer at all. So
Okay, so that was just a side point. Is this the only proof text we've got to show that the book of Daniel is about to be unsealed? Brother Johnson, you had your hand up.
I don't have other proof texts, but the principle is in the time of Jesus, the book of Daniel gave light. In the time of the Millerites, book of Daniel gave light. And so in our time, there must be a portion of the book of Daniel which brings light to our time.
and then Daniel gave light in his time as well.
Maybe.
Well, he did. He understood by the books the number of years. So he opened light. Daniel opened light in his day, and then it was Christ and Christ's day, then the Millerites. So you can have three witnesses around.
Do you mean Daniel as a person,
As a person, yeah.
as opposed to a book? Yeah, because the books he's opening are some other books.
Yeah, but Daniel opened light for his day as well. Both the judgment and the time the prophecies were fulfilled as well.
Anything else, Sister Tess?
It's not a proof text, but can you just use a principle that's sealed for the time in the end? there's 2 times the end.
Okay, that's what I was thinking. 'Cause we did that this morning, didn't we?
Can you repeat that?
Sorry?
Could you repeat that?
For me, or
What she said.
she has to repeat it? I'm increasing it.
Louder.
There's more than one time of the end and it's sealed to the time of the end, so if it's only sealed to 1798, that's a little bit vague. It has to be sealed to both in some different levels.
So how did we do that this morning? Where did we go to this morning? Sister Sarah? Yeah, I saw your eyes turn there. Do you remember? So we said Daniel chapter 1 verse 1, Daniel chapter 1 verse 21, yeah? So that's the point that Sister Tess is making, even though she may not have specifically made that point. She's going to verse 40, there's 2 time of the ends, yeah? So you can also see 2 time of the ends when you realise that Daniel is literally, which is I think the point that you're making, that Brother Jonathan said 3 times, or the third one is inferred, but once for the Jews, once for the Millerites, and then for us. But you said he did it for his own dispensation, and you can see that in chapter 1. And when he does it for his own dispensation, where does he take you to? Is the test? When he does it in his own dispensation, he brings light for his own generation. Where does he take you to?
Time of the end for the
Yeah.
whole.
The time of the end, yeah? He brings you to the time of the end in his time period. He almost gives you the time of the end for the Jews, but not quite. It's more like the empowerment, yeah? Because I don't think you can mark... No, I don't think you can mark the time of the end from the book of Daniel for Christ's line. No?
Can in a way.
In commenting on it says that based on the prophecy of Daniel they should have known, but she was making reference to the 70 weeks prophecy.
How would they have known?
70 weeks are determined for thy people
Where does that take you?
to 34 AD.
And
That was the time of the end. for
and
the
27. Yeah, but that's not the time of the end. Time of the end is 4 BC.
Jews. Oh, right. I'm thinking.
Yeah.
I'm thinking the end of the prophecy, the end of the probation for the Jews.
No, because what
I'm thinking
we...
of that, yeah.
I don't know if I rubbed it out. We did the time of the end this morning, remember? 1:1 and 1:21. And this is 5:36 or 37, depending who you ask. And this is 6:06 or 6:07. Yeah, Brother Theodore's going to make it 6:07. Yeah, so this is 70 years. That's what Daniel chapter 1 is marking. So he brings you here to the time of the end. So we did that in the first assignment. We showed that the first year of Cyrus, chapter 1, the third year of Cyrus, chapter 10, is the time of the end. So he does it that way. And you go to Daniel 11, takes you to the time of the end, Millerite history, 1798. And then there's one more that's going to bring you to 1989. So you need a bit more information to do the line of Christ, don't you? Because the focus is a little bit different. What information do you need for the line of Christ?
Just the time of the end.
To find out where the time of the end would be. How would you calculate the date? Sorry?
How old he is when he is baptized?
Yeah. So you have to know how old a priest has to be when they're going to begin their ministry. Yeah. And I'm not sure what book that's in. Maybe someone can find that. But that you need to know that piece of information. So once you go, it's 30, you can just go back 30 years. You get to 4 BC. Yes.
You tie that with Isaiah's prophecy.
Which
The
one?
virgin.
Yes, but I mean, you could tie it back to the Virgin. You could tie it back to Balaam's prophecy. So you can time back to different prophecies, but I don't think they're going to give you a time.
No, they don't.
And no one would know that a virgin's just given birth, really.
No.
They don't really know that. Yeah. So, Daniel 11 is unsealed by Revelation 14. Revelation 14 needs a bit of help, and it's Revelation 18 that's going to give that help, or it's going to, as I think Sister Shamila said, it's going to empower Revelation 14. Yeah, she uses that phrase. I think it's that sounds quite a nice way of expressing it. It empowers the everlasting gospel. And then we spoke about the problem is with the second angel. There's something funny about the second angel, which is why it's under attack. And we spoke about that yesterday, yeah? Where do we see confusion on the second angel?
It's arrival.
Okay, so yeah, it's arrival, but I mean, in what way? The first way I'd say is, it's the message of Babylon. Yeah. So there's going to be confusion on this. So it gives you a clue there. So we've got a problem with that it's part to do with Babylon. What else did we say there was a problem? Second angel's message is what? Sorry?
Righteousness.
Sanctification or righteousness, sin righteousness. So we don't understand about sanctification. When are we sanctified? How are we sanctified? All the mechanics of sanctification. So there's a problem there. What, when and how do we become righteous? So there's confusion on that issue. What else?
But it's a message to the church. The church doesn't want.
The message to the church that it doesn't want. And the big one. The 25-20. Yeah, the 25-20 is the big issue. And the reason you know, or we should know, that the church rejects the 25-20 is why? But why are they rejecting it?
Because it is predicting their destruction.
Because it's predicting their destruction. Yes. It's predicting their destruction. How do you know it's predicting their destruction? Leviticus 26. How do you know the chart is Leviticus 26? Oh, because you do 25-20. You know 25-20 is Leviticus 26. My sister, what you said? I didn't quite.
I was saying Habakkuk, and what we covered yesterday with the vision that was to be written on tables was the one of the fall of Judah in 586 under Zedekiah.
So remember that? Yeah? So it's the fulfillment of the vision of Habakkuk chapter 2. And the vision of Habakkuk chapter 2 is found where? In Habakkuk chapter 1. So let's just quickly turn to Habakkuk chapter 1. We'll have a quick look at that. Look at some verses in there. So the 25-20 becomes a big issue because everybody doesn't want to hear that the church is about to be destroyed. Yeah? Because the church appears to fall, but it's not going to fall. Yeah? All of these verses that come in to our understanding. Or misunderstanding, perhaps we should say. So, Habakkuk chapter 1, verse 1. And someone can go ahead and read that.
Verse 1.
Yeah.
The burden which Habakkuk the prophet did see. O Lord, how long shall I cry, and thou wilt not hear? Even cry out unto thee of violence, and thou wilt not save. Why dost thou...
Oh, just that's fine, sorry. Just verse 1. And chapter 2, verse 2, it says, write the vision and make it plain upon table. So the vision that's going to be made plain upon table is the vision of chapter 1. Yeah? So verse 1 says the burden which Habakkuk the prophet did see. What's he seeing? He's seen a vision. So what is the burden? So burden is a vision. Good vision or bad vision? Bad vision. Okay, so let's go to Isaiah chapter 15. So Isaiah chapter 15 verse 1. The burden of Moab. 2 chapters. 17 verse 1. The burden of Damascus. 2 chapters verse 1. The burden of Egypt. 2 chapters verse 1. The burden of the desert of the sea. 2 chapters, verse 1. The burden of Tyre. So, if you go back and check all of those chapters, and I just found it interesting, it's 2 chapters, all odd numbers.
What about chapter 22? It's a little bit different. No,
Burden of the valley.
Yeah.
I've never noticed that.
21 is a little bit different as well. 21 has got it 3 times. 22 has got it in there. The burden of the valley. So a burden is what? If you look contextually, it's like a pronouncement of judgment that's about to come to destroy these places. Sorry? Like a woe.
It says utterance, doom.
Yes. So this is a pronouncement of judgment. So the vision of of Habakkuk chapter 2 is a pronouncement that destruction's about to happen. Good message or bad message? Bad message. So let's read something about that. Prophets and Kings. 387 paragraph 2. Prophets and Kings 387 paragraph 2. Are we there? Tell me when you're there. Begins, we must cherish. .387 paragraph 2. We there? There's a long Bible quote, which is actually quotes Habakkuk chapter 3. So it says, we must cherish. If you're on the CD-ROM, it says, I don't know, 6-7 lines down, it says page 388. You see that in your thing? And then it says, the next line says, before him, which is quoting Habakkuk 2:20. Yeah? Habakkuk 2:20, something about restoration, just straight there. Then it says this. Actually, no. Let me read the paragraph so that we get some context. We must cherish and cultivate the faith of which prophets and apostles have testified, the faith that lays hold on the promises of God and waits for deliverance in His appointed time and way. The sure word of prophecy will meet its final fulfillment in the glorious advent of our Lord and Saviour Jesus Christ, as King of Kings, Lord of Lords. The time of waiting may seem long, the soul may be oppressed by discouraging circumstances, many in whom confidence has been placed may fall by the way. But with the prophet, who endeavoured to encourage Judah in a time of unparalleled apostasy, let us confidently declare, the Lord is in His holy temple, let all the earth keep silence before Him. So something's been restored, because Habakkuk 2:20. Then it says, let us ever hold in remembrance the cheering message. The vision is yet for an appointed time, but at the end it shall speak and not lie. Though it tarry, wait for it, because it will surely come. It will not tarry. The just shall live by his faith. Verses 3 and 4. So what message is this? Good message or bad message? But it's verses 3 and 4. Verses 3 and 4 is the vision that he's had in chapter 1, which is the burden of Habakkuk. Sorry? It's a double-edged sword, isn't it? Depending on what side you're going to stand on this argument, it's either a cheering message for one group and it's a burdensome message or a pronouncement of judgment for another group. And that's what we're required to give. This 25:20 is a double-edged sword. Double-edged, second angel. Are we okay with that? Yeah? So at one level it's a bad pronouncement and at another level it's good. By the way, I don't know if we've done this in class, when is Habakkuk? When is he ministering? We did it, we did do it yesterday, didn't we?
Between the time of after Manasseh and so Ammon may be part of this time.
Okay. So here's Manasseh, Ammon and Josiah. And let me just see if I found, I think I found it here. So if you drop down to the next paragraph after the Bible reading, Habakkuk was not the only one through whom was given a message of bright hope and of future triumph. Who else is given to it? Who else is it given to without reading? Not Zechariah. Not Jeremiah. Sorry? Who'd you say?
I said Isaiah, but he would have been killed by
Isaiah's already
Manasseh.
dead.
Sorry.
As well as of a present judgment, during the reign of Josiah, the word of the Lord came to Zephaniah, specifying plainly the results of continued apostasy and calling the attention of the true church to the glorious prospect beyond. His prophecies of impending judgment upon Judah apply with equal force to the judgments that are to fall upon an impenitent world at the time of the second advent of Christ. I mean, you don't even have to work it out. You know, there's no sort of line upon line or she just tells you straight. The impending judgment upon Judah applies with equal force to the judgments that are going to come upon the world at the time of the second advent. Yeah, so she's telling you straight. So you have two prophets. Habakkuk is here, and Zephaniah is here. So they're contemporaries, and this is Zedekiah. Let's go, where do I want to go? Matthew 24. Verse 34. Matthew 24 verse 34. No, not... Matthew 24 verse 34. Actually, in fact, it's in all of them. So you can write... We'll read Matthew 1. So if you write in the notes, it's Matthew 24:34, Mark 13:30, and Luke 21:32. So it's Matthew, Mark, Luke. It's 24:34, 13:30, and 21:32. It says virtually the same thing in all of them.
Mark 13 or
30. 13:30, and 21:32. Verily I say unto you, this generation shall not pass till all these things be fulfilled. I'll read it from Mark. Verily I say unto you, that this generation shall not pass till all these things be done. Luke, verily I say unto you, this generation shall not pass away till all be fulfilled. So we're all saying the same thing. How do we deal with this verse? What do we say about this? It's one of our key verses that we use. 24:34, Matthew. Don't know? Never read it before? What do we do with this verse? Why are we so interested in this verse? You're cold. Could someone switch off the AC? Just put it on off. It's just on the wall, the two. Oh. Hold it. Sorry?
We use it with the last generation. We pick up the last.
We'll pick up the last generation, yeah? This is one of our proof texts to say what? We're the final generation, because the generation will not die, that sees all of these things. So one of the arguments that we have to sort of worm our way through is what all the things are. So all things be fulfilled, all the things be done, till everything be fulfilled. So we have to work out what that is, but we kind of get through that last part of the verse and we say that this is the definitive verse that shows final generation. Yeah? Are we familiar with these verses?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what we do. So let's go back to Prophets and Kings. So I want to show you something. If I can find it. Okay, let's go to the top of the chapter. We're in chapter 32, Manasseh and Josiah. This is page 381, paragraph 1. So before we read the Spirit Prophecy quote, let's just go to the Bible, Habakkuk chapter 1, verse 1. We've read the burden which Habakkuk the prophet did see. So he sees this vision of destruction. It's a burdensome message, a pronouncement of judgment. And then in verse 2, O Lord, how long shall I cry and thou wilt not hear? Even cry out unto thee of violence and thou wilt not save. Who is Habakkuk representing? It's like a union, do you call them shop stewards here? Like a union rep? Yeah? Who's he representing?
God's people.
So he's representing God's people. Which ones?
The ones associated with the vision. The ones that would be a part of the fulfillment of that vision. Those of Zedekiah's time.
Okay, so it's in that time period. What's their complaint?
Persecution.
Persecution. So are they good or bad? Bad? Someone says bad, someone says good. So let's have a read of it carefully. 2. O Lord, how long shall I cry and thou wilt not hear? Even cry out unto thee of violence and thou wilt not save. Who's speaking here? So we know they're God's people in that time period. They're good or bad people? Good people? Anybody saying they're bad?
They're good.
Brother? Good or bad?
Not sure.
Okay, let's go to...
Verse 3.
Oh, I don't want to go to verse 3. Because verse 3 is too easy. Let's go to Ezekiel 9. Verse 4. Does that help? Does that, that helps?
Yeah.
Why does that help now?
Because people are sighing and crying for the abominations, and they're good people who it grieves them that there's the problems.
Yeah, because what they're crying about the abominations.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So let's go back to verse 2. Let me check it. I think there's another verse I wanted to go to.
What do we try to prove or...
Sorry? What are we trying to prove?
Yeah,
We're just going through the verses, just to have some fun.
okay.
We're just trying to see what this vision is. I want to see how we read the verses.
Okay.
So, we're done verse 2. O Lord, how long shall I cry and thou wilt not hear? Even cry unto thee of violence and thou wilt not save. Sorry, the reason why we're looking at it is because of Matthew 24:34. Just want to show you something about Matthew 24:34. That's the reason. So these are good people complaining. Yeah? Who are they complaining to? Does everybody agree with that? Okay. Someone have their hand up? I'm just looking for another verse. Joel 1:14, that was the one I was looking for. Joel 1:14. Keep your finger in Habakkuk, Joel 1:14. It's the same story. What year is Joel written in?
90-some BB, I think.
721. Straight 7?
20? That's great prophecy, isn't it?
Yeah, is it 720 or 721?
Did you say John? When John was written?
Joel, we're in Joel 1:14.
Oh, okay, I thought I heard John.
Sorry, we're in Joel 1:14. Okay, so this is after the destruction of Hoshea.
You said Joel 1:14, not John 1:14?
Joel.
Joel.
Yeah.
Joel.
We heard John. Several of us had listened.
721.
1:14.
114. Goodness gracious. Sorry.
My English isn't that bad.
No, the year. The year I'm talking
Oh,
about.
sorry, the year. 720, 721.
Okay.
780 years before Sister White, Great Controversy 308. Gives us a date.
GC 308.
308.
And the date is?
I think it works out 720 BC. See, she says 780 years prior to...
What's the date that she's doing that?
GC 308 paragraph what?
1?
Yeah.
You know that? Okay, read that then.
No, 1780.
Sorry?
1780.
Okay, 1780. So we're in the year 1780, and then what are we going to do?
Minus 2500 years.
Yeah? So 25 minus 1780. Two, 1. So it's 720, and I think you have to add a 1 onto it.
Now, why are you doing that? Why are you using 1780?
Okay, so I've done that too fast. I'm sorry. We went to the book of Joel, and we're going to Joel 1:14. We'll read Joel 1:14. Sanctify ye a fast, call a solemn assembly, gather the elders and all the inhabitants of the land into the house of the Lord your God, and cry unto the Lord. Alas, 15, for the day of the Lord is at hand, and as a destruction from the Almighty shall it come. So it says to cry unto the Lord. So I just picked up that word crying, which is the sighing and crying of Ezekiel 9:4, Ezekiel 9:4, and it's the same crying of Habakkuk 1:2. O Lord, how long shall I cry? All these people are crying for different reasons. So in Joel they're crying because the day of the Lord's coming, and in Ezekiel they're crying because the abominations that are done in the house of in Jerusalem, and Habakkuk's they're crying for the same reason. So I asked the question, when was Joel written? Because it's important for us to know when these prophets are ministering. So I put Habakkuk here, maybe a little bit before Ammon, but it's around the time of Ammon to Josiah, but it's before Josiah. And it's important to know these things, I think it is. And then Zephaniah, his contemporary, is in the reign of Josiah. He says that directly, we just read that. So that's all of that. So then I asked, when is Joel written? And Joel we've got in 721 BC. And the reason we know it's 721 BC is if we read GC 308 paragraph 1. Someone read that if they've got it up. you got it.
1780 stands in history as the dark day. Since the time of Moses, no period of darkness of equal density, extent, and duration has ever been recorded. The description of this event, as given by eyewitnesses, is but an echo of the words of the Lord, recorded by the prophet Joel, 2500 years previous to their fulfillment.
Okay, so she says Joel was fulfilled in 1780. And she says Joel was written 2,500 years before. So you do 1780, go 2,500 years back, and you get to the year 721 BC. I think it's 720, yeah, I'm pretty sure it's 721 BC. So this is just after the destruction of Hoshea. Yeah? Depending on how you do the calculation. Because the destruction of Ephraim or Manasseh is 723, 721. So you've got 723, 21. This is when Joel's written. So what is he predicting? So now he's predicting the fall of Judah. It's already certain it's going to happen. How do we know it's going to happen? It's certain. Sorry? What did Isaiah say? Not the verse, but what?
He predicts both fall of Judah and Ephraim.
But why is Judah going to fall?
Because they follow the sins of the north. They do the same thing.
Because they did the same thing?
Repeat your question, please.
Why is Judah going to fall? We're in 723, 721 where Joel is given. It's given in 721, but it's connected to 723. What's 723?
2520.
2520. So you know it's connected to 2520, the fall of Judah. Why is Judah about to fall? When does 2520 begin?
65 years.
677 is afterwards. You have to go begin backwards. Sorry?
Are you talking about
Isaiah
Isaiah 7?
7. It's 742. The story begins in 742, which is a 65-year prophecy that takes you to here. And in 742, what's happening? Not the details.
The battle
Civil War.
between-
Yeah, not all the details.
Oh.
There's a fight happening, and what does Isaiah say to the king?
65, within 65 years.
If you don't believe, you won't be
Frame
established.
shall be broken and be
Yeah. If you don't believe, you're not going to be established. And he doesn't believe, because what does he do?
He wants further son.
He gets healed. It's not from Egypt, I don't think. It's from Syria. And not only does he get help from Syria, he likes the look of their altar, yeah? And he gets a copy of it and puts it in the sanctuary, because that's what's going to help him. So by the time you get to 723, destruction's going to happen. Their fate is already sealed. And this is how many years?
Sorry.
This is 46 years. 46 years marks what? And? No, that was restoration. And the destruction of a temple. Yeah? It's a destruction as well as a rebuilding. So here, when he gives this, he's already marking destruction's happening.
How can we show that it is a destruction?
How can we show it's a destruction? John 2:20 says, destroy this temple, which took 46 years, and I'll rebuild it in three days. You can just do it straight from that.
Okay.
You can go to Millerite history, which is 46 years.
This is what is building a temple.
Which temple's getting built in Millerite history?
SDA temple?
SDA temple. And no one's going to be called Babylon?
Okay, yeah, they called the Protestants Babylon, but they called them Babylon by the time 1844. Yeah, okay, it's
46.
Also 46 years.
46 years. Is it terrible? You said something? Someone said something. Oh, okay. Yeah, 46 years marks the building and the destruction of a temple. Yeah? So, even before the time of the end, what do we already know? Destruction's already going to happen. You can't avoid it. It's unavoidable. The fate is already sealed for this church, Adventism. It's already done. How do we know that? How could you check? I'm not asking you to prove it. Just sort of maybe another concept. Could you go to someone and say, by the way, before you even get tested, before the angel even arrives, you're going to be destroyed? What's the logic for that? Sister Tess? Which line are you going to go for?
Israel?
Yeah, but how are you going to show for Israel before the time of the end that they're going to be destroyed?
It wouldn't be a repeated history if it weren't.
Yeah, but I want a story. I've asked you for a specific reason.
Not getting it.
Time of the end, 4 BC.
Oh, they'll pass by at 4 BC.
What would you say?
You've got to speak louder.
They'll pass by at 4 BC.
You've got to tell us who they are and tell us a bit about the story.
Because the angel comes down and wants to find somebody to announce the birth of Jesus, and he hovers over the temple, and there's no one to tell. He can't share the message. So he's actually virtually heading back to heaven to announce that there's no one on earth and no one of God's people he can tell when he spots the shepherds, and he's able to announce the birth of Christ. So he has already bypassed the temple, Jerusalem, and the leadership.
But it's worse than that. Because who's studying the message before the star even arrives? Sorry?
The wise men?
The wise men are.
The East.
They're already studying Balaam's prophecies. Because that's how they know, when they see the star, they know it's a fulfillment. Or what I think Ellen White calls, does she call it a harbinger? Yeah?
Yes.
So they're already studying beforehand.
But there are also other peoples, like you have Simeon, Anna,
Yeah?
so they were studying as well.
Yeah?
Because it just sounded like the Jews didn't study, it were just the Gentiles.
The only point I'm making is that the ones that you know who are going to announce the time of the end, because depending on how you're going to see what Anna and Simeon do, they don't mark his birth. They're marking something slightly different. And most people don't even go there what they're marking, because it's 40 days later, I think it is, that they're doing it. There's a number 40, so there's different things that they're marking, even though we could just say collapse it all time of the end, but they're not really the time of the end, I don't think, because they're not marking his birth. The number 40 is significant there. But we know for sure that the wise men are already studying the message. And if they're studying the message, what do you know that the leadership are doing? I'm going to suggest that they are studying. They're studying the myths. They don't want to see what's going on. They don't want to hear about it. But there's a buzz in the air. I mean, they're not as ignorant as they claim to be. Remember the story Herod says, you're not as ignorant as you pretend to be. You know something is going on. And they do.
They heard, Ellen White says they heard the message from the shepherds, and they were aware of that, yet they ignored it,
But they also had awareness of the prophet.
and they spoke against it, actually.
But I'm not even talking about that, just what happened. I'm talking about the prophecy itself. Because if you go back, how do we know that? Because if you go back to Moses' time, there is no sign, there's nothing there. But again, everybody knows something's going on. So why does Pharaoh want to kill all the babies? Who told him? Who inspired Pharaoh to kill the children?
The children, the Israelites knew that the time was near.
Yeah.
So they had to study it.
Exactly. Everyone knows. But the Jews are studying a myth.
And what?
A miss or myth?
A miss.
A miss. Wrongly.
MIST. Oh, a mist.
A-I-M-I-S-S.
Sorry.
A miss. Not a mist. A miss. How would we say? What's another way? In the wrong way, for the wrong purpose.
Because they even had the virgins there. They had set it by class. They expected him to come, I think, through some hierarchy and.
Yep. So they're not going to accept how it's going to work out. So all I want us to see is right here, before the time of the end, the fate is already sealed for Adventism. And I don't think we teach our message that way. We teach it like, oh, there's still more time, it'll be okay. You're a Levite, don't worry. And we don't give it the force and the potency or the punch that it should have, that the fate of this church is doomed. And unless you go in and rescue people, they're going to die. Because this message, because this reform life is taking so long, 28 years or something counting, we just think, oh, it's all okay. But we must get out of this time issue. Sister Antonisha, then brother.
I know your focus is on the time of the end, but I have a quick insertion. It follows the time of the end. But when Christ was made that trip to the temple at 12 years old, the spirit of prophecy said that had they listened to his instruction, he would have been better received 27 AD when he started his ministry.
Yeah. Things would have moved ahead and he would have been accepted. So Ellen White does this all the time. She says, like, it's a potential for it to happen. If they had listened, if they, like, there's an option. Have they got an option? Did they actually have an option? Because he's going there and he's speaking to the leaders. I mean, I don't know exactly who the priests are, but maybe Caiaphas is, a high-ranking priest then, being groomed to become the high priest. And maybe he's the one he's speaking to. And he says, do you know what all these lambs are about in the book of Isaiah? And they're saying, no, we don't actually. We have no idea what lambs are all about. Because that's the dialogue, isn't it? He's asking them what the lamb means, and they're clueless about what the lamb is, and they won't ask him. They won't ask him, you tell us who it is. And so, because they don't ask, they don't receive. So he's not going to tell them who the lamb is. They're left to puzzle it out for themselves, and they refuse to. So, did they have a chance? They had no chance. By the time they're 12, it's already too late, because they're already demon possessed. Aren't they?
They will pass by.
Yeah? Yeah, but not just pass by, but they're demon possessed now, I'm saying. They're already demon possessed.
They are.
Okay, how do you know that?
How do we know they're demon possessed?
Christ made it quite plain.
Okay, Christ, when he was 12 years old?
Oh, no, not then.
Okay, but by the time they're 30, you're saying they're fully demon possessed.
Yeah.
Saul. King Saul. When's he demon possessed? The beginning, middle, or end of his reign? Sorry?
Middle to the end.
It's right at the beginning, isn't it? David's just anointed. He's anointed. He becomes demon possessed, and they come up with this foolish plan. Instead of praying to God, let's have some music. Like, music's going to solve the problem. Why did they have to have music to solve the problem? Prophetically. Babylon, sorry?
It's a message.
Because it's a message. Because music is a message. It's a noise, isn't it? Yeah? Peace and safety. But it's symbolic that there's a message that's about to come. Who's going to give the message?
David's going to give him the message.
David is. David gives the message, doesn't he? Ezekiel 37, I think it's verse 7 and verse 8. What happens? 7 and 8. There's a what? There's a noise and a shaking. There's a shaking in the kingdom between two rival factions. Yeah? There's a shaking in the kingdom about two rival factions. Either Saul or David. Because right then, what does Saul know? More than that. He knows he's bypassed. By whom? He already knows that. But he knows David is the man that's going to take his place. He already knows that. Who told him that? I don't think Samuel does he?
No, because
Samuel doesn't tell Saul. Samuel's scared.
he was commanded to anoint David in secret.
Yeah, because Samuel's scared. It must be the demon, I would think.
Brother Parminder,
The demon says, kill that man because he's going to do something bad to you.
this quote, the angel represented in prophecy as delivering this message symbolizes a class of faithful men who, obedient to the promptings of God's Spirit and the teachings of His Word, proclaim this warning to the inhabitants of the earth. This message was not to be committed to the religious leaders of the people. They had failed to preserve their connection with God and had refused the light from heaven. Therefore, they were not of the number described by the Apostle Paul, but ye brethren are not in darkness.
Gives the reference. I like that quote.
That
Oh, so you haven't finished. Sorry.
that they should overtake you as a thief. Ye are the children of light and the children of the day. We are not of the night nor of darkness. This is from Spirit of Prophecy, Volume 4, page 199. So you
4SP 199.
Yes.
What's the context of that?
She's saying that God could not give the leaders.
Yeah, but what history, I mean? What history is
It's
4SP 199?
The message, Revelation 14, 6 and 7.
Is that it's Millerite history?
Yes. She quotes directly Revelation 14, 6 and 7. That's the above paragraph.
Is that right?
What was it?
Because I like that quote. Oh, anybody got their hand up? Say something? Oh, sorry. Yeah, it was a while ago.
So
Oh, 1 second. Is there a problem?
Wait, where was the quote?
4SP
199.
199. I didn't know what paragraph.
It doesn't put a paragraph.
It'll say, on the computer.
Point 3 looks yes.
Point 3.
Thank you.
199.3. And is that Millerite history, even though it's quite in Revelation 14? You sure that's Millerite history?
Talking about the Reformation.
Okay, so it must be Millerite
It's
history.
also talking about First Advent. It's
Oh,
about
okay.
Bethlehem.
That's what I was wondering about how.
Shepherds.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
So is she? What's the primary reference point? Is it Millerite history, and then she takes us back, or? Which verse? Which paragraph are we in?
196.3 is talking about the First Advent, but she's applying it to Millerite history.
196. At the time of Christ's first advent, the priests and scribes of the holy city, to whom were entrusted the oracles of God, should have discerned the signs of the time and proclaimed the coming of the promised one. The prophecy of Micah designated his birthplace. Daniel specified the time of his advent. God had committed these prophecies to the Jewish leaders. Therefore, they were without excuse if they did not know and declare to the people that the Messiah's coming was at hand. Their ignorance was the result of sinful neglect. Strong statement. Sorry?
That's a very good paragraph.
Yeah, it is. God did not send his messengers to the palaces of kings, to the assemblies of philosophers, or to the schools of the rabbis to make known the wonderful fact that the Redeemer of men was about to appear upon the earth. The Jews were building monuments for the slain prophets of God, while by their deference to the great men of the earth, they were paying homage to the servants of Satan. Absorbed in their ambitious strife for place and power among men, they lost sight of the divine honours proffered them by the King of Heaven. With what profound and reverent interest should the elders of Israel have been studying the place, the time, the circumstances of the greatest event in the world's history, the coming of the Son of God to accomplish the redemption of man. Is she talking about his birth? Yeah? But is she talking about his birth when she says all of this? Or why were not the people watching and waiting that they might be among the first to welcome the world's Redeemer? But lo, at Bethlehem, 2 weary travellers from the hills of Nazareth traversed the whole length of the narrow street. The reason I ask that is because before she gives Micah as the birthplace, then Daniel 9:25, it says the time of his advent. But 9:25 doesn't give you his birth. They were supposed to be studying properly. Sorry?
That quotation where she talks about that, I always wondered, why does she make reference to that as saying they should have known the time of his birth? And as you're saying here, they should have been studying. Obviously, God had given them signs that they should have known.
There's so many things. It's not just you need to study Daniel 9, you need to study all Old Testament history and typology. They knew they should have known, because they don't know he's going to come as a priest, so they're not looking out for the 30, so they don't know the year. All of these things they should have realized and understood. And
but there it says they should have been studying the place, Bethlehem, the time, so there must have been something, and the circumstances, the star, there's stuff they could have known. And Ellen makes it very plain that they could have known, they could have been the one welcoming rather than the wise men from the east. They could have been there waiting.
What are the circumstances of his birth? Rome.
Yes.
And what about Rome?
Daniel 11.
Specifically about Rome, what's happening? The taxation.
Taxes.
Yeah, they should have known all of the stuff that we're supposed to know, and which we're trying to get up to speed about. They're required to know all of those things, not just the place, the time, but the circumstances.
So therefore it isn't Daniel which talks about the raiser of taxes.
And this applies so much to today, because it says the greatest events of the world's history. We should be a way to be prepared for the greatest events in our time, in our history as well. I mean, and you look at what Louis Weir wrote. We as Seventh-day Adventists should have known, and should have been out in the world. United States and the papacy are going to conspire to bring down the Soviet Union. We should have been announcing that for years ahead of time.
1957.
Sorry?
And he wrote that in 1957.
1957, Christian Doctrine.
She says,
Sister Terry?
Oh, there would have been Pharisees that knew that their leadership had made a league with Rome, just like we do today.
Yes. And they don't do anything about it.
Well, they expose errors in the church, but they don't necessarily want truth.
Yes. Is Terry? Yes.
I was just looking at the paragraphs where it talks about the celestial messenger that hovers over the temple. And in 199.1...
Speak a little bit louder, they won't catch on the mic.
An angel visits the earth to see who are prepared to welcome Jesus, but he can discern no tokens of expectancy. So he hovers for a time over the chosen city and the temples.
Speak a little bit slower. Sorry, it's just that people contact me and they say they can't hear it and it's too fast.
Okay. But even here is the same indifference. In paragraph 198.2 it says, in amazement the celestial messenger is about to return to heaven with the shameful tidings when he discovers a group of shepherds who are watching their flocks by night. So they're already bypassed. But in 199.1 I think that's where she ties it into Millerite history, where she says, oh, what a lesson is this wonderful story of Bethlehem, how it rebukes our unbelief, our pride and self-sufficiency, how it warns us to beware lest by our criminal indifference we also fail to discern the signs of the times, and therefore know not the day of our visitation. It is unto them that look for him that Christ is to appear the second time without sin unto salvation. So she's bringing that into our history.
She ties it in with Millerite and with ours.
You were going to say something?
That's what I was going to bring on.
What is the day of visitation?
9/11.
9/11? Is she making 9/11 in these passages or the time of the end?
Time of the end. She makes it the time of the end.
That's why I was asking, before we got to when it says two weary travellers traverse the streets of Nazareth, it says, with what profound and reverent interest should the elders of Israel have been studying the place, the time, the circumstances of the greatest event in the world's history, the coming of the Son of God to accomplish the redemption of man. So we would normally place that, not the baptism on 9/11, but it seems to me she's referring to his birth, because she says it in the next sentence, because then she talks about the two people, the two weary travellers from the hills of Nazareth. We always pick up how many people now at the time of the end? 2 presidents, 2 Persian kings. What other 2?
And Darius.
Yeah, so 2 Persian, so 2 Medo
Oh,
Persian
sorry,
kings.
I'm
So two kings, 2 presidents. There's more than that. Christ and John.
Context of Babylon, you had Nabopolassar and Belshazzar.
Oh, father and son.
Yes.
That's good.
Aaron and Moses.
Aaron and Moses.
I know you have.
And now this, he says.
William Miller, Ellen White.
No,
that's
Ellen White's not
different.
full
That's
name.
different, yeah.
And now you've got another one. But lo at Bethlehem, 2 weary travellers, Joseph and Mary. Sorry?
Rebecca and Noah. Oh, sorry, Enoch and Noah. No.
Oh, yeah, Enoch and Noah, they both alive at the same time. Or Methuselah. Sorry?
What's the question again?
We're just looking for 2, and she's tying up Noah, and there's someone with Noah. Was it Methuselah?
Yeah. When he dies.
Yeah, you'd have to hear the flow, right?
Yeah? Oh, let's write those all down, because I like those. I always forget them. Who we've got? John and Christ. Cyrus, Darius,
Nabonidus and Belshazzar.
Nabonidus and Belshazzar.
Aaron and Moses.
Aaron and Moses.
Noah and Methuselah.
Noah and Methuselah.
The 2 angels. The 2 in the reading you had
Oh,
said.
okay, so we've got Joseph
2 weary travelers, sorry.
and Mary.
Melchizedek and Abram did have a conversation
But not at the time of the end.
about it.
The presidents.
2 presidents, that's it. Reagan and Bush. Yes, we had. I mean, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's quite a lot. Okay. To the eastern extremity of the town, vainly seeking a place of the rest and shelter for the night. No doors are open to receive them. In a wretched hovel prepared for cattle, they at last find refuge, and the Saviour of the world is born. So the greatest event seems to be the time of the end, in this context at least. Then heavenly angels are sent. 198, an angel visits the earth to see who are prepared to welcome Jesus, but he can discern no tokens of expectancy. He hears no voice of praise and triumph that the period of the Messiah's coming is at hand. The angel hovers for a time over the chosen city and the temple where the divine presence was manifested for ages. But even here, the same indifference. The priests in their pomp and pride are offering polluted sacrifices in the temple. The Pharisees are, with loud voices, addressing the people and making boastful prayers at the corners of the streets. There's no evidence that Christ is expected and no preparation for the Prince of Life. In amazement, oh, did you pick up it says they're offering polluted sacrifices? Yes. In real life, are they polluted? They're not unclean. I mean, they've been properly inspected. Yeah?
It's like doing the right thing for the wrong motive.
When you reference that, she usually uses that in reference of having sin in your life and working for God.
And doing what?
Having sin in your life and working for God.
So when you've got sin in your life and you're working for God, it's a polluted sacrifice.
It's pomp and pride.
First.
Yeah.
First.
For filthy lucre. In amazement, the celestial messenger is about to return to heaven with the shameful tidings when he discovers a group of shepherds who are watching their flocks. Who must this angel be? I was going to say, it must be the first angel, mustn't it?
Yeah.
He's come down from heaven. And as they gaze into the starry heavens, are contemplating the prophecy of the Messiah to come to earth, longing for the advent of the world's Redeemer. Here is a company that can be trusted with the heavenly message. And suddenly, the angel of the Lord appeared, declaring the good tidings of great joy. The earth is lightened with his glory. Celestial glory flooded all the plain. The innumerable company of angels were revealed as if the joy were too great for one messenger to bring from heaven. A multitude of voices broke forth in the anthem which all the nations of the saints shall one day sing. Glory to God in the highest, on earth peace, goodwill toward men. That's 9/11?
No.
Why do you say that would be 9/11?
Celestial glory.
Why not?
Jesus' birth. This is the time of the end. And she's highlighting the fact that they should have known it, his birth. So she's saying the time of the end is of paramount importance. And that we should have been able to discern the signs of the time.
Oh, what lesson? This is the wonderful story of Bethlehem. How it rebukes our unbelief, our pride and self-sufficiency. It warns us to beware lest by our criminal indifference we also fail to discern the signs of the times. And I think when we did the first paper, I think it was Brother Jonathan, I can't remember what reference he used, but it's Evangelism 613. But I think he used another one. The problem that God's people face all the time.
So I'm thinking that not only that we mark a glory at 9/11, but there's also a glory at the time of the end.
It's the greatest glory, apparently.
You mean about the arriving of the angels?
613 paragraph 1, I'm sure it's that one.
What do you say, 6?
13. EB 613.
What does it say, the quote?
That time of the end.
No, I don't have an evangelism quote.
You don't have it? You don't have it on your phone?
I have it on my phone now.
And many are doing the same thing today in 1897. You remember the quote now? Yeah.
Many are doing the same. This one is 80 to 90. Okay. You want me to read it?
Yep.
Many are doing the same thing today in 1897 because they have not had experience in the testing message comprehended in the first, second, and third angel's message. There are those who are searching the scriptures for proof that these messages are still in the future. They gather together the truthfulness of the messages, but they fail to give them their proper place in prophetic history. Therefore, such in a danger of misleading the people in regard to locating the messages. They do not see and understand the time of the end or when to locate the messages.
What group of people is she talking to about here? Adventist, post-Millerite. Go back one paragraph. It begins with what? You've got it?
In our day, as in Christ's day.
In our day, as in Christ's day, there may be a misreading and misinterpreting of the scriptures. Is that deliberate or accidental? Sorry?
It said will be, not maybe.
Oh, which version? I mean, evangelism. Evangelism, it says maybe.
Oh,
That's a wrong one.
upward look, it says will be.
Oh, you got Sermon and Talks?
Upward look.
Upward look. Okay, I don't know which one would be the original one, but will or may. The only point I was going to ask is when it says there's a misreading and a misinterpreting, is that deliberate or accidental? From what we already read before.
It's deliberate.
It's malicious.
It is.
It's malicious that they're deliberately reading, and she says it here. They gather together the truthfulness of the messages, but fail to give them their proper place in prophetic history. Here it is. One sentence back. There are those who are searching the scriptures for proof that these messages are still in the future. So they want to not have an understanding of the time of the end. They want to push it into the future. And they're searching the scriptures to prove that it's so.
About the Seventh-day Adventist Church and the happenings of 1863 being intentional.
Yes. Deliberate. Just dropping back. If the Jews had studied the scriptures with earnest, prayerful hearts, their searching would have been rewarded with a true knowledge of the time. And not only the time, but also the manner of Christ appearing. It's almost the same as what we read just before, when it says the place, the time, and the circumstances. She says the same thing here. True knowledge of the time, not only the time, but also the manner of Christ appearing. So the manner of Christ appearing, what is his appearing that you're referring to? The birth or the baptism? Birth. It's the birth. So she wants us to know, in our day, as in Christ's day, there's a misreading of scriptures, and we need to know the manner of Christ. We need to know what the time of the end looks like. And you can find it in the scriptures.
So
that isn't what's happening in our day.
Sorry?
It's 9/11 that's under attack.
But who's she talking about here? The context of what she's talking about is the leaders.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Pre-time of the end. And now, you know, when we talk about time of the end, the whole church is following through with it. Got the same issue, sorry.
And that's what I would say. So we know the leaders are passed by before the time of the end, thus. And then, as I was mentioned earlier, so the three angels' message with John the Baptist, Christ, and the disciples, that wasn't to reach the leadership at all. That was to reach the Jewish people, which they rejected, and they were given another chance. But that makes me lead, where was the three angels' message for the leadership? Back then, as if you were bypassed by the time of Christ's birth, what was their three angels' message, or the messages for them? I kind of, just makes me wonder.
Brother Jonathan.
But it's not concerning.
No, yeah.
We talked in the last 15 minutes a lot about the leadership, and they're passed by, and obviously that's SDA leadership for us today. So how does this change our relationship to the church, or should it change maybe, or you know what I'm saying? Or do you understand what I'm saying?
I think this issue is bubbling under the surface, that we really do not want to address this issue. What is our relationship to the church? I think we're beginning to see the implications and the context of this. Someone read it the other day. Oh no, it's Brother Tyler, I think. For so long, the Millerites, they refused to address the issue. They didn't want to address the issue of their relationship with the church. So they just kept on putting it to one side and saying, we're not worried about church membership, what we're part of or what we're not part of. We're all Christians, and we'll just leave it there, and we'll just talk about 9/11 or whatever we want to talk about. They were not addressing the issue of their relationship with the church until they were forced to do it. Circumstances made them do that.
So are we forced at the moment to do that?
Yes.
Or you think we are at the point?
Yeah.
So what is generally our relationship to the church? I mean, we consider ourselves as Adventists, Seventh-day Adventists. Is it correct or is it not correct?
We might do, but they don't.
You think so?
They disfellowship you.
I mean, they disfellowship you, but do you think this means...
Over theology.
I was just going to answer that. And how did Jesus relate to the priests? Now Jesus was a true Jew. He was truly following what they should be believing. And how did he relate? The Jews wanted to kill him. I mean, a little bit worse than the church wants to do to us for our beliefs. How did Jesus relate? He did reach out, and he tried to correct them, but eventually some of them did come back. We had Joseph and Arimathea and Nicodemus, like at his death. But then it says later on, many of them did come later. Jesus still tried to reach them, although not as a whole group, that even knowing that they were bypassed. I'm sure he knew that. Well, he was very clear about that, really. And but I guess we need to take our example from Christ.
Sister Olivine, Brother Lara.
In Jamaica, a letter was sent out through the conferences, those who have 25-20 belief should not be allowed to participate in the churches, should not have any active part. A member in our group was taken off the choir on the Sabbath because of her belief. There was another guy who was wavering and he requested baptism, and he had to first say, publicly renounce his belief in the 25-20 and say that he will never study with us again, that he would never have anything to do with us or come where we are. There was a church crusade where the members, those of the crusade, they were walking the church grounds looking for persons with 25-20 belief to throw them off the church property. Another member of our group was threatened that they would call the police on them, and actually threatened that if that person had their way, they probably would have shot him. So what is the relation? Like, how does the church?
Yeah, that's your experience. Just to give our experience, our conference knows what we do. Our pastor knows what we do. Nothing. We just keep on going. So I have a total different experience.
Well, Larry.
Oh, I was just going to say, my understanding of our relation to the church in this time period is Isaiah 58 verse 1. And it says, "Cry aloud, spare not, lift up thy voice like a trumpet, and show my people their transgression, and the house of Jacob their sins." And then also Isaiah 62:6. "I have set watchmen upon the walls, O Jerusalem, which shall never hold their peace day or night. Ye that make mention of the Lord, keep not silent." So Jonathan, you guys are taking the message to the church, right?
Yeah, that's what I said. Our local church, our pastor knows what we do. He knows that we believe in the charts and in the 25-20 stuff, and we shared everything, almost everything with him. Our conference knows what we do.
But are you telling them that they're been passed by and stuff like that?
We're not preaching hard enough.
Do you have to do that?
I don't know.
Let's preach harder.
You have to tell a pastor so and so, hey, do you know you're passed by, or do I just tell him the message?
Now you have to tell him he's passed by.
You think so?
That's what Brother Larry said.
No, we can't say that because they're not passed by until they make that choice that they're going to reject this truth.
Just tell them the demon possessed then.
Yeah, that'll do it.
I mean, you try to reach those people, isn't it?
I think we should.
Are you talking individuals or are you talking
Exactly, but based on the
I'm
quotation.
talking about individuals.
They're different. It's different.
Okay, so we've got to close. We'll go to 2 Corinthians. Okay, 2 Corinthians. Last Bible verse. Close on this point. So we saw this morning that there's no difference between an SDA and the world. They're all the same. And on this side, there's no difference between an SDA and the world. They're both the same, yeah? Because this is God's people, come out of her, my people. And what are the what have these group done? Come out of her. Come out of Adventism. Agree with that? Kept themselves separate. Yeah? 2 Corinthians chapter 6. These people here, the concision, did they believe in our message? No. Don't believe in our message. So it says here, verse 14. "Be ye not unequally yoked together with unbelievers. For what fellowship hath righteousness with unrighteousness? And what communion hath light with darkness? And what concord hath Christ with Belial? Or what part hath he that believeth with an infidel? And what agreement hath the temple of God with idols?" they got idols. Adventism. We just read that, didn't we? Polluted sacrifices. For ye are the temple of the living God, as God hath said, I will dwell in them and walk in them, and I will be their God, they shall be my people. Wherefore come out from among them, and be ye separate, saith the Lord, and touch not the unclean thing, and I will receive you, and will be a father unto you, and ye shall be my sons and daughters, saith the Lord Almighty. Heavenly Father, we thank you for your goodness and mercy. We want to have a clearer understanding, Lord, of the importance of our reform line. As we consider, Lord, the work that you bring to view at the time of the end, help us to have a clearer understanding of those who have not accepted and those who continue to reject this truth. And Lord, may we reflect upon our own behaviour, our own thoughts, our own fears, our own concerns and worries, lest we find that we get removed from the household of God. Please be with us and please bless us. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen.